time did they change this? Ooh, I do like that they actually changed how many seconds. This is 138 Veronica, but you can still call me that if you want. And this is my live stream. Merry Christmas, Happy Boxing Day, Happy whatever day of Kwanzaa or Hanukkah this is for you. And welcome to my live stream. I'm probably gonna start talking not to sound super. Let me tell you a little about myself. Everybody wants that for a Christmas present, don't they? I am a college student. I'm in my final year. Apply for, you know, graduate school. Show on Cartoon Network. Or FX. You know, I'm pretty flexible like that. And a black female young animator working in the industry. I'm probably going to warn you, a lot of my stuff isn't woke because I'm just learning about being woke myself. Did you guys know women's clothes don't have pockets? Staging, basically. I do not like how her head looks. To be honest, I grew up with television and the golden age of Cartoon Network. So late 90s to mid 2000s, we missed you, Stuart Schneider. And I love watching Looney Tunes and Tom and Jerry. So you would guess what my first career choice was, right? Various experiments, including shutting off my family's water heater and trying to build a rocket with not a clothesline, but with an iron. And instead, I decided to become an animator because of some of the guys that's on TV, including. And you know what? I told myself I wanted to be with him. I wanted him to mentor me. He died about 10 years prior, which also made me cry. For new goals, and first I wanted to work at Pixar, and then I still wanted to work at Cartoon Network again, and for a while. And it got to the point that I was really selling them on my own. I don't want the arm there. Trying not to make this too boring. So I went to college, and I told myself I wanted to be an animator. I wanted to learn everything that I could. And during the summer of 2015, I ended up getting some back surgery. I'm totally fine now, so no one needs to send me anything. Let's just see if this is still streaming. Yep, we're good. The requirements for my classes. Instead of any film courses, I literally found out that year after I couldn't back out, that I could not actually change it. So I decided to learn some animation on my own and start my own. Well, I already had a YouTube channel, and I already had a previous attempt at animation before. Again, I did not know what I was doing. You can probably find the original episode if you go really far. I guess it would be around 2012 about plagiarism for a contest. And I decided, and I was trying my own thing, and I ended up looking at an advertisement for Channel Frederator. We're saying they wanted any all artists, and I thought, you know what I could do? I could apply my artistic talent. I wanted to knit things based off of cartoon characters. Let me just save here, because animator is known for crushing on me. Some type of direction, since I really didn't know what I was doing, and I was animating on the free software known as OpenTunes. I almost forgot the name there, folks. And learn how to draw different things on. First, I would draw them on paper, then scan them, and then since my first animation was still on paper for a Nickelodeon contest, which wasn't animation. My first animation was for a high school class. The second animation was for my was for a Nickelodeon scholarship that I did not win, which honestly I knew right now for any and all film projects. So, film students for the win. Let's see. I started working on the Nickelodeon one, sent that in, and got it posted, and some people liked it, surprisingly, and decided, hey, collaboration, you know, with other people to do this crack pair shipping on help, since I ironically could not convincing mail to save my life, which to me it's and I put in all call for someone to help me, and the nice together, but he is the usual candidate I go to first. It got pretty well, so I kept getting invited for more and more collaborations. So I'm at least known in the Frederator. Occasionally gets together and watches my videos. Occasionally, and I'm happy to have anyone watch them. I usually communicate the most through Twitter, and for 2 years now, I've been trying to keep up a media empire of Twitter, Tumblr, DeviantArt, and most recently, I have a content every day. My Tumblr is being used for my fan art and sharing my stuff, along with some independent comics, and DeviantArt about promoting blackness in the media, and he wants me to create at least the first black superhero, which me as an eagle-eyed comic book person, I have to remind him that we do have comic book superheroes. You have to look for them, or they get needlessly screwed over by publishing, but whatever. And believe it, saying that he never saw it when he was a kid, and that I need to do it because I'm an artist. Which, of course, I am. A lot of my leading men and women in my comics are black. Myself, which, if you met me, I'm not really a take-a-picture person. I'm a person in my comics. So I decided, okay, well, my dad probably won't like them all because it's my center comics. So let's see if he'll like some of the, if I find out old school ones. I go to comic book conventions, so I usually find him things there. And one of the things I got him, and he said, okay. And to be honest, I also took him to the first Justice League for a while, because I thought, hey, I can show you one of the first. My dad would like it because it's a black suit. I didn't have the heart to tell him about Jimmy Olsen. And another standpoint of, and just probably about 2 months ago, I started live streaming like the one you're watching here. And since I can't talk on forever, I usually play some free Authority to Play. Thank you for that tip, History Chicks. And I was playing like PAX music for, ironically, having their commercials that popped up during the music in my video. Yeah, I didn't have it on the screen for very long, but again, they popped up for, you know, freelance music. Animat, who's letting me use his animation podcast to actually play during my live. This will be the animation podcast. And eventually I think they will, but they need to hurry up. We need more than just conspiracy theories around Elsa. She was in her room. She does not, if they give her girlfriend, you need to build up to it.
Our next story right over here, idea that they are considering that is basically freaking people out. Like, there are so many people out there that are getting so excited about this. In fact, there are some that would demand this yesterday. From the Art Directors Guild, they are receiving the 2018 William Cameron Menzies Award. So may I just say congratulations to the John Musker and Ron Clements are. These are the legendary directing duo that has Hercules, Treasure Planet, The Princess and the Frog, and just recently Moana. Like, these guys are directing letter. When being interviewed by the Huffington Post, they actually brought up an idea that could be quite interesting. That there could be a chance we would see this happen. Now, of course, they would talk about Moana and some of the innovations that they have done in terms of the animation and how they crafted Moana herself as a fully fleshed out female protagonist, a strong female protagonist. And then they would bring up that maybe, just maybe, Disney could create their first ever LGBTQ. They would make their comments, reading from my source here in the Huffington Post, they would say that it seems possibilities are pretty open at this point. It would be driven by a director or a directorial team that really wanted to push that, and if Disney Animation's Chief Creative Officer John Lasseter liked the idea, but I would say we haven't really had restrictions placed on, pretty open to the idea of creating an animated feature that would star an LGBTQ plus. Now, the idea in general of having this princess from the LGBTQ community would be an LGBTQ person, and that maybe for the sequel in Frozen 2, that she would get a girlfriend. I just find that it would cause more harm and fully established Disney character and just make them a part of the LGBTQ plus community. You know, that would be like making either Mickey Mouse or Tinker Bell gay, you know, just to have that representative right over there. But honestly, I just feel like with Elsa's popularity at this point, it would just be sudden, you know, it would just feel like it would be way too controversial and it would cause more. However, if they would do it by creating a brand new Disney princess to go and create a whole new representative of the LGBTQ is definitely one of those things that feel like what took them so long. And honestly, I am definitely for this idea because right now, Disney actually is back to their glory days, or how they're back telling on a classic fairy tale and would be given massive success, and they would give us such amazing movies with them. Like I said, like with films like The Princess and the Frog, with so they definitely are in a position where they could take a classic fairy tale. However, the second reason why they're pretty much armed and ready to very well is actually because Disney is now capable of tackling serious, even to themselves, that they can go in a very serious and adult subject matter, like discussing, like putting in a commentary on discrimination and bigotry onto a family-friendly animated feature. And to go into a serious and controversial subject matter like the LGBTQ plus community, they would actually
safe
with that commentary. That's basically reasons. Not only are they capable of crafting that John Musker and Ron Clements brought up, is that now Disney would just need to go and find a director or a directorial team that would be capable of doing this. Now, I know that there are some people that would say, oh, why not bring in Byron Howard to do this? You know, a princess from the perfect for this job. I mean, seriously, think about it. When you think about a princess who is a person of color with Jasmine from Aladdin, and they were the ones who could Frog to be a part of the Disney princess team. And then you got, like, why not this? I'm sure that these guys, LGBTQ plus community, and to go and put them in a great Disney film. Because it's not just the fact to create, oh, let's go and create, of course, with stuff like this, there would be some consequences as well. It will spark some controversy no matter what, since sadly we do still live in an age where there are a lot of bigoted people plus community that they would absolutely hate anything that would even have just a slightest hint of it, they would absolutely throw in a massive temper tantrum and complete rant about it online. Like, that will happen. But as long as the movie can be great, then it shouldn't be a problem, honestly. Like, those complaints and those little... and people will just enjoy and love this movie. I mean, it's a little bit like what's happening as I'm recording this with Star Wars The Last Jedi. Yes, there are a lot of whiny fanboys that hate Star Wars The Last Jedi with a passion, but that's the thing here as well. But yeah, say that I am fully in support if Disney... Yeah, this idea, like, I'm fully forward with it. Let's see what happens with it.
Ooh, I like the pacing. I'm getting better.
The big one.
Let's see. What can I do for time?
Episodes. I have already talked about all the seasons, and I even have done a few bonus episodes. But this time, it's entire. All 120 episodes, what they have done. Allow me to give you a little bit of a description of The Muppet Show itself. Now, yes, as you may know, this is a variety show which features a lot of puppets provided by the Jim Henson Company with Jim Henson and his really talented crew. Now, in this show, it stars Kermit the Frog, which at the time, he has already gotten some popularity with Sam and Friends and Sesame Street. But now he is having his own show where he is hosting this vaudeville theatrical show where in between parts they would go and feature some skit, musical numbers, and a whole variety of stuff. While at the same time they would also have some special guest stars that would have numerous of different talents. They would get comedians, they would get actors, they would get a whole bunch of celebrities, and this definitely was The Simpsons of its time. Special guest star, that's kind of a big deal, actually. While at the same time, Muppets provide numerous of different characters. It's not just Kermit, but you also get other characters like Mr. get the characters from Pigs in Space, Dr. Bunsen, Honeydew, and Beaker, and the list just goes on. And especially in terms of the humor, that's definitely the one signature aspect of the Muppets. It's basically a cartoon in live action. All the crazy things that you would expect coming from a cartoon that would be from either the Looney Tunes or MGM, like with Tex Avery and stuff like that. Rather it be with all the different explosions, the squash and stretch, unique creative monsters that would be there, or the different creatures and animals and all that kind of stuff. They all appear put on a show. Definitely is fantastic about the Muppet Show. What really does stand out, the humor is a limit when it comes to what they can do with it. A lot of the humor can be more visual instead of just like what is written, if it's trying to be clever or witty and all that kind of stuff. Which, you know, honest, like, in a way, you could say that it is somewhere in the lines of something like Anywhere with it, especially the aspect that of, like, whatever animal you can create or what unique monster can happen, or it feels very unique. It does have that sense that you get it anywhere else. But it's not just visual, but also you do get some good comedy in terms of the written time to shine and to go, not just make them funny, but also to develop a little bit of their character, to know who they are, what are their needs, what do they like, what they don't like, and all that kind of stuff. So they characters, even though this is a variety show, it is more like a little bit of a mix of variety, but also at the same time you do get a narrative plot point going on at the same time. There are some episodes that can focus a little bit more, focus more on the variety side. It really does. Well, a lot of it is pretty unique. Sometimes it could be in the form of a pun and how to execute a song, like take the theme of what the song is about and then like bring it up to a whole new level, or whatever special guest star that the song based on who is there. And also, depending on the special guest star, it could really be a mix on how it could have performers that just appeared and they would just go and sing their songs and stuff like that, contribute more to a story that like very much was The Simpsons before The Simpsons thing, and bring in as much special guest stars as they can. Now, of course, even though there are a lot of great things about it, there are also a few things that... The thing is that with the whole Muppet Show, it is supposed to be family entertainment, and oftentimes they do get a lot of the cheap jokes, a lot of bad jokes per se. And I'm not just talking about Fozzie Bear, but like you'll find that there are a lot of sketches like Veterinarian's Hospital or in Marks, and there are some episodes that where the special guest star wouldn't necessarily contribute to anything. So like what would happen with the episode itself, it would contribute to. Do get some great ideas, but they don't necessarily go far with it due to being a TV show. There are some times when it can feel interesting to go and see. But yeah, that's kind of what happens when you're a TV show. There are some times when they would go and really... In fact, this could debatably be the most heard either in the 70s or in the 80s. Because the tech they have done in the Muppet Show, it really is absolutely phenomenal. It really is. And the reason is because, and with the technology, with what they can do in terms of creating the illusion of puppetry on television, having characters float around or have characters just standing up on their 2 feet without seemingly having like a puppeteer behind them, it can really go far. And especially, it's not just the puppets themselves that are definitely creative and unique with what they can do. Gorgeous. Like often it can be a bit of an afterthought with what they can. Such a grand scale. They can actually be really big and really elaborate just to have all the puppeteers to go and work around with the puppets on it. It is rather impressive. It's this hands down. With all that said, though, if I do have to mention regarding the seasons altogether, if I have to go and choose which ones I would believe to be one, it could be really debatable between either 2, 3, and 4, but season 4 because the story with the characters and also with the puppetry, but also some of the best episodes and some of the more worst season, it's pretty much easy and it's probably unanimous. They're trying to figure out who these characters are. I mean, like, yeah, sure, Kermit is Kermit and maybe Miss Piggy is Miss Piggy, but you could tell that the puppeteers are still trying to figure out who Fozzie Bear is, who Gonzo is, or who any of the other characters are, because there are some who completely be replaced with Beauregard in terms of the janitor job. But yeah, you could definitely tell in season 1, still trying to find their identity in terms of being a show in general, especially when they're like at the dance or the house bits and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, that definitely is the weaker one, while is great, which is most of the time, and so many very well crafted, both in quantity and quality. There are so many of them that you would probably... There are a lot of them that are definitely recognizable, even in this day and age, especially when, like, you would get, especially, like, Liza Minnelli, Carol Channing, and can definitely be, like, great in terms of, like, the comedy, the storyline, and the creativity that they can think up with it, and also the technical achievements of Sesame Street on television. Like, it really does push the levels with what you can do with TV magic. I'm interested in the Muppets because of the recent films that have been released, like the 2011 Muppets film or check out Muppet Vision 3D. So if you're a fan of puppetry, if you're a fan of variety shows, like, you know, if you enjoy watching TV and you enjoy, like, if you enjoy watching something that is completely silly, if it's off the wall, if it's, like, if you're a fan of, like, the Looney Tunes per se, then yeah, absolutely is a series that is definitely worth watching. And yeah, get to know so many songs and get to know so many lovable characters from Jim Henson. So yeah, this is definitely worth watching. And this is it, guys. That is pretty much it with the Muppet Vlogs all together. Maybe this is the end. Maybe I'll continue it in the future, but who knows. But I just want to take this moment to go and say thank you guys so much for this journey with me. It really was a blast, and it really was a long and crazy journey about it.
Okay, there we go.
You know, it really does fill my heart with such joy knowing that people are watching me talk about the Muppet Show, but also kind of regain a new interest. I mean, I know that, like, it seems crazy to go and watch 120 episodes of the Muppet Show. I mean, it started out as a small project to see how things would go, like a little experiment, but I didn't really expect it to go this far. And just knowing that there are some people who really had a blast just experiencing these episodes with me, it's just an absolute blast, and it really is an absolute honor. So for watching the Muppet Show with me and to pretty much relive my childhood, I definitely had a blast, and that's much it with the Muppet Vlogs. So once again, thank you guys so much for watching, and we really do hope that the Muppet Show can still live on from Jen. Again, thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time, see you later, dudes.
The Comic Book Cast, the Reopen Nickelodeon Studios and Orlando, Florida Facebook page, the PlayStation Let's Play channel, and for entertainment's sake.
Fresh out the box. Stop.
This is just an introduction before I blow your mind. The show was all of that, and yes, we do all the time. So sit your booty on the floor, I just this is all that.
For the new people, we have none other than the cartoon hero himself, or the hero of tomorrow, over at Manic Expression. We have Eli. Welcome, John. Welcome, John.
Hello.
I know him from the Naughty Dog podcast and the,
Hi, guys.
I don't know any
So
of these
today
people.
we're going to be discussing about all that. And they wanted to pitch it over to various channels, and eventually Nickelodeon picked it up after cancellation of the other sketch comedy show that was airing.
Snick had a lot of great shows, as I'm sure you mentioned your show, but all that, for me, was the show that kept me coming back, actually, believe it or not. I remember disliking about
That's been to the mainstream audience, which I've already discussed about so many times that it's already discussed about it. But in a sense, it was like the You Can't Do That on Television of our generation, in which it involved with a bunch
To all that when I was a wee lad, when I was,
a wee lad.
channels, and it was the most entertaining show that I came across, and didn't really care for the musical guests either. I would always be like, okay, and it was just a big lure, and it really, the humor was a big part of what made me who I am today, and so I owe a lot to all that.
Awesome. How about
it was actually Snick that actually let me watch, all that, and
beginning? 94. I remember it coming on, and I was really gravitated towards it. I remember the various skits that were performed. I remember some of the cast members. I didn't really pay too much attention to the musical guests either, except for a few exceptions.
No one ever does.
But I didn't really care too much for it either, but I can understand for most people, they didn't really care too much about it either. They just liked it for the skits and for the were really into hip-hop and rap at the time. That was probably their thing. But I guess for the kids, they didn't really care too much about it. There were just a bunch of people that we mostly opinion on the goal. See the pilot of all that right before they started watching the series.
No.
Okay.
I watched it after.
Similar, but at the same time, there were been this one skit that involved with Annie, as in like the little orphaning, and a lot of bad things happened to her from the ceiling falling down to her exploding randomly to a bunch of secret agents just kidnapping her for no reason. And then there was this one skit that was called Lucky Cheese, which was obviously a parody of Chuck E. Cheese. And one of the cast members, I believe it was Katrina Johnson, was supposed to be like this guard preventing people from going in. And then there was like this sort of MTV skit of interviewing like celebrities or hip hop artists, and one would kind of like do cutouts every time that a skit would be. One was Joey Lawrence, and then there was a couple, same thing. Seasons 1 through 6, a lot of the major cast members that people pretty much remember were featured. We had, of course, Kenan Thompson, Kel Mitchell, Angelique Bates. We had Katrina Johnson, as previously mentioned, Josh Server. And of course we had Amanda Bynes, Mark Saul, Gabriel Iglesias, Leon Frierson, so many people there. And of course we had the infamous skits like Good Burger, Loud Librarian, we had Bag, Sag and Berry, there was Island Girls, there were so many skits. And I guess we'll just go around the table and discuss about, you know, who our favorite cast members are and who our what our favorite skits are. So Eli, why don't you go first?
Well, I know it's kind of obvious, but believe it or not, one of my favorite skits was Super Dude. It pretty much had the same premise every time, but I think it was really Kenan's comedic talent that made it work.
Only featured like once or twice, and he played another character called Yo Girl. The most recurring villain in Super Dude was Milkman, performed by Josh Server.
Yeah, him too. But I think he also played Cowgirl, going, I am Super Dude, I will defend you all, but he was like, and I also like to cuddle.
And I like pretty ponies, and I like poetry and bubble baths. That's like Batman going around as like, I am the Dark Avenger. I like to draw pretty ponies.
I don't care if it's Superman and all his friends on magical ponies.
Do you have any other skits that you remember?
Well, I had a lot of them prepared, but I can't think of that many recurring sketches. Oh yeah, Vital Information. That was pretty funny.
Why.
Oh yes, Vital Information for your everyday life. And basically it was the same premise in which they give you like weird information for your everyday life, even though most of it didn't really make sense. Some of it includes, if your friend Billy was on the roof and you pushed him, don't go like, hey everybody, it's raining Billy! Or something.
I can think of off the top of my head. I can think of a lot of one-shot sketches that I like John, but we'll get to that. And I had a lot of cast members that I liked.
Okay. All right, so that sounds great. Let's go on to somebody else. How about you, John?
My favorite skits of hers, I'd say Miss Fingerly, The Loud Librarian was always really funny to me. Random. And I think she was involved in possibly the most underrated time, her and the Big Ear of Corn.
Oh, yes, the Big Ear of Corn. Interestingly enough, the Big Ear of Corn actually debuted in season was a cow, an actual cow, believe it or not, and eventually they started using the Big Ear of Corn.
Damn you, Peter!
Yeah, damn you, Peter. Members, John?
Yeah, Kel, Josh was funny as Detective Dan. He was always one of my favorites. He'd just pop up. I remember one skip specifically when Amanda Bynes was walking down the stairs for a glass of milk at nighttime, and she went to her fridge and she opened it up, and Detective Dan was sitting there. Just, I'm Detective Dan. Just randomly in her refrigerator at night. Dan was a big favorite of mine. Super Dude is good. There's a lot of it. I like a lot of it.
Okay.
It was just the sketches where he would the customers would order whatever they wanted, but the actual
except that the difference is that instead of an incompetent cashier, you had somebody who was completely dirty and the whole place was dirty. So I take it that it was a very clever way of saying brassiere without actually.
Kel and Danny were like my favorite ones to watch most of the time.
Okay.
Kind of hilarious that you would mention that, because in I remember in one of the very last episodes.
Josh also wore a brassiere one time, and then there was, and then finally you turn into one. As for my favorite skits and cast, actually one of my favorite skits that most people don't always been one of my favorites, and I find to be really underperformed by, whether it's from putting spices on peanuts or peanut butter. Oh, okay, you want lemonade with ice and sugar? Well, that'll be $300, and everybody will be like, "What? I'm not gonna pay $300," and then she'd be like crying. It's like, if my is the Island Girls performed by Alicia Reyes and Lori Beth. I kind of find it hilarious about that. It's kind of like the equivalent of Gilligan's Island, except even more insane. Like, instead of, building a whole bunch of contraptions to get themselves off of the island, it's just you have Kiki, who's like the crazy one, and Fran, who just wants to get out of there and doesn't want anything to do with Kiki, being stuck at the moon forever and ever and ever and ever and ever. I cannot stand the loud librarian. I have Asperger's syndrome, and every time she yells or every time there's a loud noise, splitting headache, or I just get a huge migraine that I really can't stand it, so I end up just skipping the thing and watching something else. Yeah. So
controversy.
I know. But then again, I'm pretty much known for controversy. This is the same person who said that I hated Roundhouse page saying of how much I'm an idiot, so thanks for that.
So does that mean you don't like Crazy Steve?
Oh, Crazy Steve from Drake and Josh?
Yeah, he's like the same kind of character.
Well, he doesn't yell. I mean, he does yell, but at least he doesn't like bang gongs or turn on or blow. You on about how we feel about the progression of all that from season to season. Like, when I started watching it again, I felt that the first included in that, to be quite honest, they didn't hit their stride just yet. Like, Gabriel Iglesias, who I found to be really hilarious, he didn't hit his full potential until maybe he does okay. I mean, he does like hilarious performances as females and stuff like that, but and then of course there's Nick Cannon, and I'm just gonna flat never was, even when he was on TV show, the Nick Cannon show on Nickelodeon, and when he went off and did his other stuff, I've never really been a big fan.
Yeah, I agree with you. I never was that much of a fan of Nick Cannon either, but the thing is, though, the Tame was still a great show, and for a while until Amanda went, but
yeah, until she went cuckoo. She checked her brain out the door a long time ago. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, and the funny thing is, some of the sketches from All That and the Amanda Show kind of blend together in my head because I watched them at the same time, and it's funny though because I remember All That did All That do fake commercials like the Amanda Show did?
They did one fake commercial. The only fake commercial that they've ever won, and it involved with edible school supplies. Like there was the edible binders, the edible.
Okay, but I do remember in later seasons of All That, around its final season, it started to get a lot louder, Exactly.
So it's kind of like a reverse. You see, around this time, Dan Schneider left All That to pursue in the Amanda Show, and he became an executive producer. Coppola and Heath Seibert, who are writing partners, and a lot of you people who may remember Kevin from the Stage Manager, who would always say 5 minutes, the show starts in 5 minutes. A little bit odd. I think that the skits in the later seasons started becoming a little, mix it up a little bit by throwing in a couple of one-off skits. Ashley. And then, of course, we had various amounts of other good burn on the convenience store and a poor job. And I think the cast members left around season 5 because she was getting too old. And then you had Keenan and Kel who left, Alicia, you had Katrina and Angelique who left due to contract reasons. And then Amanda left for the Amanda Show. So season 6 was kind of like a point in which people just became less interested. Josh was the last cast member from the original. And
where did everybody go?
Yeah, I don't know. So yeah, at that point, I think that the kids who grew up during the early 90s were getting a little VH1. It started to change a lot for the crowd who grew up during the 90s. And I guess that's why, for some people, they don't really remember the later runs.
I remember a few of them. Like I said, it definitely got a lot.
Cast member.
Oh yeah, Mark Saul. Yeah, I think he was good, underrated too. Another underrated cast member, in my opinion, was also Leon Frierson, who did that really weird skit, Leroy and Fuzz. It was kind of like a parody of Sesame Street, in which you have Leroy, who's like the bad kid who doesn't even care and abuses the puppet.
That's not a toothbrush, that's a sander.
He shuts down his throat.
Yeah.
The making of this skit. Oh yeah, yes they were. But yeah, I mean, you know, while some people do remember a handful of skits here and there, I think that when things run for so long, it starts becoming a little bit tired and stale. And you know,
Sorry.
oh yes, I know all about that. Yeah. Anyway, so that was made into a theatrical film.
Yeah, I think so.
All right, who wants to start with that?
My parents will watch all that with me, and when they announced that movie, they took me into Good Burger having Ed use the secret sauce, and that what was the rival?
Mondo.
And it was just this big adventure of friend versus friend, and in the end, friendship. That's how kid movies are.
True.
I remember as a kid, I was really creeped out by the opening bit, where, because if you recall, at the beginning of the movie, Ed, when trying to get to his job, he accidentally runs through a basketball court while holding a baby, and eventually the baby gets switched with the basketball and gets dunked. So I was wondering, I was thinking, my God, that baby probably got hurt really bad as a humor.
I think with the Good Burger movie, I think that it's kind of like what Space Jam is for a lot of people. It's a guilty pleasure. It might have a lot of funny moments, but I feel that there are some moments in the movie that are kind of pointless. Like, for example, you have Keenan's girlfriend, who's played by Shay Jackson. It really pretty much doesn't go. It's like, of course, the nostalgia critic mentioned Carmen Electra.
I think I broke my ass.
All that who would have done Camel, Josh, and we had Lori Beth. It would have been nice if we had more people mixed in, but I guess, maybe they wanted to, just keep the appearances. Like, Angelique Bates was featured in Good Burger multiple times, and so was Katrina Johnson. I mean, and then like this grumpy Jewish guy. It would have been nice to see that as maybe a cameo from Lester Oaks Construction. Your guys' opinion on Sinbad as the teacher?
I agree.
I know that Sinbad also played as Ishbu's father and all that, but care less.
It's really kind of sad that I remember Sinbad more in Jingle All the Way than I remember him in Good Burger.
Oh, time that he was going bankrupt in his career, and then he decided to go back to stand up so he could be prominent. And oh man, I don't know what reviewed it. I was a bit harsh on it because I felt like there was just. I mean, there's no real reason to go back to it except nostalgia. Okay. I mean, it does have some really fun moments, and there are some moments in which I do feel is a bit pointless. But other than that, oh man, I can tell you that when re-looking through all the comments on this particular run, and to be quite honest, I can understand what are your favorite skits and who are your favorite cast members.
I would say my favorite cast member is Lisa.
Kind of like the new Ask Ashley.
In a way, it kind of was, except that it didn't involve with letters. It just had a big slumber party, and you have Bridget, who's like all happy, and you have the other girl played by Giovanni. The other girl, I think her name was Claudia, played by Lisa Foyles, is always like depressed. She talks a little bit like Daria.
Party at Carrie's house.
How about you, Eli? What are your favorite skits from the revival era?
I have to say, I'm still kind of a pretty big fan of Randy Quinn.
Take out fires and it just messes up.
Yes.
Oh yes. At the same time, and it's kind of funny about how that became like a really big Ross Perot is. Yeah, that was actually a Randy Quinn volunteer firefighter was actually a really good one. Just how manic and trying to be helpful he was, even though he pretty much failed every time. Randy Quinn firefighter, yeah.
Yeah, Fireman and Harry Blair are the two that I most watched when I tuned in, because I think around like season 7 through 10 I stopped watching it less and less because it stopped getting...
saying a bunch of lies. You have Sugar and Coffee was a huge recurring skit. Coming Back at You is when they added like a whole bunch of disgusting ingredients and then spewing it back to the TV with a machine. It kept playing it over and over and over again, and there was started growing a bit stale. And I think that's why ratings started. They were trying to do, you know, get new cast members and recreate things from scratch. I guess people just yeah. And, you know, I was so excited about seeing the first movie with my parents and my sister. And all the, you know, it even had some little joke references that if you read the books, you would get a kick out of. Bridget's Slumber Party was really great as well. And then, of course, another one of my favorites was the dictionary one, like Lisa's dictionary, in which, you know, Lisa would say a word, and then the puppet, which was right next to her, would say it in a sentence that would be really insulting. Like, I think one of them was wood, and, you know, the sentence was, your personality is like a block of wood. Oh, ha, 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 ha. And then Lisa was like, oh, how insulting. And it's like, oh, yeah? Well, it says you. And it's kind of like similar to Leroy and Fuzz, except in reverse, in which the puppet is actually trying to teach the lesson. And Chelsea Brummett was okay, too. I also like Kyle to get kids to perform various funny skits online, and whoever they felt that was the funniest would be invited over. And there were 2 kids who were chosen. Those who was the actual winner was, you know, she was okay. So many ways. He was trying to be Ed, trying to act like him, and he did a horrible job. I don't know how you guys feel about it, but I wasn't a huge fan of Ryan Coleman's take on Ed from Good Burger.
Oh, no, not at all.
I don't like it either.
I seem to recall that, let's see, there was also, I can't think of his last name, Chris Farley to me.
Oh, yeah. I know who you're talking about. Yeah, I think, I forget his last name too, but a few years ago, I actually saw him in the Food Network competition. He looks different now. He's kind of like really skinny. Well, not too skinny, but he was like a little bit
Shane Lyons.
That's what it is.
Yeah,
Shane
yeah.
Lyons. Thank you, John.
I only recall a toilet? What the...
Toilet wins. People driving around the taxi.
Talent she has?
Oh, I wish. No, because believe it or not, she was the younger sister of Britney Spears. And we all know how back then in the nursery, which, you know, the 10th anniversary sketch, you know, special, were, you know, that they brought back, like Detective Dan and Vital Information. But I felt like there should have been more skits that they could have brought back. But other than that, it was pretty okay. I wasn't a really big fan of the whole Danny Tamborelli being caught in his home and stuck in to get himself towards the stage right before it was too late. I mean, you know, Danny Tamborelli was involved with a lot of great skits, and he was a very popular Nickelodeon actor, so it would have been a little bit off-putting to me.
Maybe he was just really busy and they had to shoot around that.
That could have been a possibility. I do know that around that time, Danny was, you know, quitting acting temporarily, and he was going to college, so maybe that was the reason why he did it.
That's a shame.
They brought back Kenan for one of his shows, and he did amazingly with the new cast. And one sketch that we actually didn't bring up that had him in it from the older days was Miss Piddlin.
Oh, Miss Piddlin, yes. I'm Miss Piddlin. I love peas.
I don't remember his name, but there was another one of his characters. Yeah, another chef character that was obsessed with chocolate.
Randy and Mandy were obsessed with chocolate. And I think that today you could not do that. It'll be like...
You're supposed to eat cookies.
I know. Well, that's America for you, trying to be conscious of our weights and, you know, not having diabetes. With all the chocolate that they ate, you know, it's just insane about how everything because, you know, that was when Angelique Bates' contract ran out and he was looking for a new co-host. You have Josh Silver playing as this chef who's obsessed with vegetables, and then she brings out this organic... Tandy. And then she has the cookbooks, and she's like, I have a cookbook around there. It's called Vegetables and Such. And she brings out the organic celery, and she said, tosses out the basket full of vegetables and just looks at the chocolate with a, my only friend. Yeah. Anyway, so going back... if anybody remembers the Snick on Air Dare, which the two of you, I'm sure, who's listening to this... Lisa Foyles, a couple of All That cast along, and they would dare people to do something stupid. One of them involved with eating a gal. Embarrassing. For people who complain about Nick Studio 10, well, guess what? Nick on Air Dare kind of did it first. And I think, thank you. You see? Be like John. Yes, be like John.
Ever bring a show like All That back?
Well, I did listed that as the top, as one of my top 10 happened, and I was like, no, it could never happen again. I mean, unless there's somebody who's competent enough to kind of like do similar to, you know, bringing a Saturday Night Live for our generation, then, you know, with Nickelodeon the way it's running now, then no. I think that back then, you know, in the 90s, when we had more ads and maybe have some new kids and some brand new skits, but it's not going to be as good as the original. You know, Nickelodeon's reputation of Nick Studio 10 and Awesomeness TV, which, you know, turned out to be huge disaster. So, you know, I'm very hesitant at it.
That's a shame.
Yeah. Would you like to see all that come back for a new generation, or do you think it should just be
the casting
and bring in more funny actors?
Yeah. I think we didn't bring this up, but what I really liked about the run of all that was that of the diversity of the cast members. You had cast members who are black, white, Hispanic, a very mixture of different shapes and sizes, and they could all be pretty with blonde hair and nice teeth and all that stuff. So I guess that, you know, it'll be like the Disney Channel, in which they try to preface. What's good about the original, although that some of them did have acting experiences, you know, all that was kind of like their first big, you know, what they became today, you know, with Keenan becoming a cast member on SNL, and you know, various of the cast members would become really popular being singers, or they would become actors or actresses, or they would be really popular online, like Lisa Foyles. Things will be a little bit different than what it was back 20 years.
I'm sorry. I know
something in
Keenan
my
was
throat.
really young when he started out on all that, and on all that.
Oh, that would be hilarious. Imagine Christopher walking on Good Burger. Hey, welcome to Good Burger, home of the Good Burger. Can I take... Kind of hilarious. Taron Killiam, who he didn't appear in SNL as well. I think he may still be in SNL. I haven't watched SNL in a while, but yeah, he was also another you know, Nickelodeon person who also.
It kind of goes downhill later on, but and not just because of the quality. Some of the stuff that happens.
Okay, how about the rest of you?
I think, yeah, if like you want to see how a kid version of SNL was early on, I'd say you could watch, you know, seasons 1 through maybe halfway through 7, if you know, to get a chuckle out of it still. Other than that, not so much, unless you just want to see the entire run in its entirety.
Okay, how about you, John?
I think it'd be good for kids to watch it, at least get used to it. And, you know, it was brought up as a SNL for kids, and I don't know if kids watch SNL these days.
You know, there are some parts of it which are a bit outdated, but I think that due to the charisma of cast members and just how passionate they are with acting in the early runs and some of the later runs, I think it's good to check out. Of course, you know, they're going to point where a lot of Nickelodeon shows, gosh, Zoe 101, iCarly, Victorious, and all that stuff, Keenan and Kel. So yeah, I would recommend
that Family Tree officially dead.
I think it is.
Cancellation of Sam and Cat.
I think it is, because Henry didn't have any of the cast members that we had, which that's a shit.
It lasted 20 years.
That's true.
I think Sam and Cat ended because of contract negotiations.
Yeah, well, there's a lot that ended the way it did, but you know, that's all right. So that concludes this episode of Casual Chats. Let's do some plug-in promotions. Eli, why don't we?
I guess probably the best thing for me to promote right now would be Red Ribbon Reviewers, which is because well, until a true cure is found, we've got to be promoting it every year. And hopefully, even if someone's not having a good holiday because of it, then maybe we can put all of our content together and hopefully at least give you if you want that, you can, if you want to become a WordPress.com.
That sounds like a great call.
Who Loves One podcast, the podcast. And we talk about everything from Nickelodeon to pop culture to what we're doing in our personal lives. And it's connected to what I call .com/JME.
Okay. Tristan?
Well, a ton of stuff. You can check out the comicbookcast.com or the Patreon page, because we have review, just play games and commentate and just have a fun time. And right now it's Disney month. The Jungle Book game by Genesis, played by Patricia, if you guys want to check that out. But yeah.
Alright, as for me, I just started off with Jungle Book. I'm going to be featuring the songs that were featured on all that, as well as having one more episode of Casual Chats where I'll be interviewing a very special guest. I'll give you a hint. If you're a huge fan of the JV Club podcast, it is the person who runs it, and we will be having that person on. Hopefully it'll be up either by the end of the year or sometime next year, so stay tuned for that. So yeah, that concludes this episode of Casual Chats. Guys, thanks again for coming on by. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Kellogg's Orange Soda.
Okay, so for our next story right over here, this...
I thought he was actually reviewing stuff and he wasn't. My bad.
Oh, there are so many places to dream of.
Can take us over the rainbow.
I bet I can use imagination to discover all kinds of new things.
Of course. It's your key to unlock the hidden wonders of our world. That little clip you just heard came from to describe imagination itself. It is the key that opens the bridge that would turn the ideas in our heads into reality. Sometimes it is used to introduce innovative inventions that we would go on to use in our regular life. For example, to do it, then what actually rhymes with it? Animation. But when it comes to imaginative animated features, there is this one portal that has fascinated millions by being the true devil unlike any other. But funny enough, you cannot find this portal in any of the American animation studios. No, not in DreamWorks, not in Illumination, not in Warner Brothers, not in all that I'm talking about can only be found in Japan. In a Ghibli, we're dominating the animation industry in the creative department. Some could even say that this was the time when Japanese animated features were at its finest. Hold on tight, dudes, because Animation Look Back is taking flight in the world Ghibli. Now let's start with one of the founding fathers of Ghibli, Isao Takahata, University of Tokyo in French literature. During that time, interesting French animated feature that was unfinished at the time. That was Roi et l'Oiseau, or The King and the Mockingbird in English, and it was what inspired Takahata to pursue a career in animation. The first step he took was joining Miyazaki. Their mentor, Yasuo Otsuka, decided that they would be ready to take on a big role for their next feature for the first time, with Takahata as the director, Prince of the Sun. Or The Great Adventures of Horace, Prince... Oh, okay, you know what? I'll just call it by its real title. Taiyo no Oijin Loop, Panda Go Panda, Heidi, Girl of the Alps, Anne of Green Gables, and Pippi Longstocking. Which the last one didn't happen because the original Suzuki, a young reporter who had to help start a new animation magazine called Animage in 1978. Funny enough, Suzuki didn't really have much knowledge in animation, but hey, guess it doesn't hurt to learn. So he called up both Takahata and Miyazaki to talk about the movie, and he got absolutely nothing. Yeah, they actually spent a whole hour talking about why they don't want to talk about it. Okay, let's try this again. 1 year later, contact Miyazaki again, this time to talk about his first animated feature he directed, The Castle of Cagliostro. The results were better. At first, Miyazaki wanted to ignore him, but as time went about a dream movie he wanted to make, one whose concept sounded so extraordinary to Suzuki, a real feature film called Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind. Events of the 7 Days of Fire, the world is at total war with nature, battling giant insects and spores that send out toxic fumes in the air. One princess from the Valley of the Wind, however, Nausicaa, is on a pursuit to save everyone she loves, including the giant bugs, from the invading kingdom of Tolmika, while meeting new allies executives in the hopes to actually turn Miyazaki's dream into a movie. But they all ended up batting an eye. So what went wrong? You see, in Japan, one does not simply make an original animated feature. It has to tie in with another form of media like a manga. Miyazaki went straight to work on turning issue was released and the number of issues would rise. So does the popularity of Nausicaa, with green light the film. Oh, by the way, the two haven't seen each other since Miyazaki quit Nippon Animation in 1979. But anyways, with the dynamic duo back together, they settled in a small animation studio called Topcraft and immediately grabbed the attention of animators in Japan. It really does help when Suzuki is also working on his part to promote the film through best talents. It doesn't mean that things were going smoothly. Due to Miyazaki's major demands, it would happen quite frequently that they would fall behind schedule, resulting them to find more animators. One young man, however, Hideaki Anno, immediately came into the studio to show what he's got to work on Nausicaa. Miyazaki really liked his potential and gave him on the spot the crazy task of animating the Great Warrior. The result was extraordinary to everyone and marked Japanese animated franchise Neon Genesis Evangelion. When it was released on March 11th, 1984, along with earning some very good reviews. Of the film losing the movie's original narrative, and it has the most nonsensical poster in contrast to the movie. Alright, seriously, let's just examine this for a moment. Okay, because I guess she doesn't matter that much. And I see there's Asbel completely in the wrong movie. As you can guess, every foreign release of his film, he would enforce no edit rule. But luckily, in 2005, Disney would release an uncut English dub of the film that would include an all-star cast, as inspiration to make their giant enemy Bungie said that the film and manga were influences to the Final Fantasy games. As for the manga, Miyazaki kept on making on December 1994. After more animated features. So they all got together and decided to create their own animation studio. But what can they call it? Well, Miyazaki got an idea. You see, he's actually a really big fan of airplanes, which explains why he features them quite frequently in his movies. One plane that he remembered was an Italian World War II observation plane called the Caproni CA-309 Ghibli, which was named after the Italian word for the hot winds that came out have no relevance whatsoever, and it's just a name, and it could be that too. On a side note, I'm sure that it's kind of complicated, but here's the thing. In the original Italian word, I is pronounced with a hard G, being Ghibli, but technically it's a mistake on Miyazaki's part, but in case that you want to refer. But even if you say Ghibli, I'll get what you mean. I'm not going to judge. I mean, I'm not the internet. Hard-working orphan who dreams of finding the legendary floating island of Lapida. His dream wouldn't set sail until he found a girl named Shita who gently floated down after falling from an airship. Castle Perenella Park, located in Mina Creek at far north Queensland in Australia. In fact, if you visit the real castle now during bike tours, you'll actually hear the music from the island of the same name was Laputa, Castle in the Sky. But he then realized there was some Spanish, like in the US, Mexico, and Spain. Miyazaki died right afterwards and swore that he never knew about it and that the name Laputa was meaningless in English and Japanese anyways. Funny enough though, the movie is still called Laputa Castle in the Sky in the UK and Australia. Another case of controversial names in the movie, but this time purposely misspelling Sheeta in Disney's English dub. In the Japanese romanization of the became a massive success both critically and financially. A few years later, an English dub was made for Japan Airlines and it was released in US theaters by Streamline Pictures. Although the head of the company, Carl McKeck, wasn't really a fan of the English version, Streamline would go on to do the English dubs of which you'll find out what as they come. Nowadays, the only way you can get the version is through the Japanese DVD original Japanese version. These include making Patsu and Sheeta sound older, take away any references of Robert Louis Stevenson's treasure one-liners, have the Dola gang love Sheeta instead of seeing her as a mother figure, and have composer Joe Hisaishi make a new. For these changes, they were actually approved by Studio Ghibli and Miyazaki himself. But then later, for the 2010 DVD re-release, to the original, all the extra dialogue and sound effects were removed, and the original 39-minute soundtrack Hisaishi did returned. Completely went nuts when it aired on TV, and broke a new record on Twitter for the most tweeted moment, 99 tweets per second. 2 years later, Miyazaki would make a film in an old house with their dad so that they could be closer to their sick mom in the hospital. While settling in, they would often encounter some strange and magical bunny-like creatures. Believe it or not, a part of this movie is actually autobiographical. No, his mom had to spend a lot of time in the hospital because she had spinal tuberculosis for 9 years. In fact, the movie even hinted that Satsuki and Mei's mom had tuberculosis. Miyazaki even characters had to be little girls because it would be too emotional for him if they were boys. Speaking of the girls, the movie was supposed to have one girl is waiting for the bus with Totoro. But when half, only having her just didn't work. The solution to this, for the name Totoro, it came from a Toru, said by Mei.
I saw Totoro. Totoro? You mean a troll, like the one in your storybook? Mm-hmm.
Interestingly enough, this was only done in the Japanese version and Disney's 2005 English dub. The 1993 Streamline English dub took that part out, believing that English-speaking audiences wouldn't get it. When art director Kazuo standards, the result led to some incredible work, successfully capturing the mixture of modern Japanese life and the supernatural. This not only jump-started Olga's career, just an hour long, but was later extended to give more context the reason why the family had to move and what does Satsuki and Mei's dad. When it was released on April 16th, 1988, it wasn't really much of a commercial success since it didn't make its money back until a couple years later when they sold some Totoro plushies. On the plus side, it did earn some massive acclaim, with Roger Ebert calling it one of the lovingly handcrafted works of Hayao Miyazaki, and that it would never have won its worldwide audience just because of it is also rich with human comedy, in the way it observes the two remarkably convincing lifelike created by 20th Century Fox and Troma Films under the 50th Street Films banner. Their English dub in 2005, which features Dakota and Elle Fanning as Satsuki and Mei, venture with the offspring of the cat bus, while mother of all cat buses, Granny Cat. The original voice of Mei, Chika Sakamoto, returned to do the voice while Miyazaki lent his voice to the Granny Cat and Totoro, and the short was made as an exclusive to the Ghibli Museum. For the 2000 replica of Satsuki and Mei's house in Nagoya, that is still quite a popular tourist attraction of Mio's in some of Ghibli's later films and in some American works, including Girls, Bonnie's Toys. But that's not all. Totoro even got a main belt asteroid named after him as the Later on, the praise for the movie would become so big that it would frequently find itself in many top lists, not just Terry Gilliam's greatest animated films. But even with those rankings, the greatest prize that Totoro has ever earned was becoming the wasn't the only feature film that Ghibli released on that day. It actually came out as a double bill next to Great Explosion. As the aunt keeps on being resentful to the kids, they decided to ditch her and go live independently. So now Seita and Setsuko to Totoro for Ghibli's backers at Tokuma, they didn't really like the idea and rejected it. Destined to get the movie to be made, Suzuki went Fireflies, which Isao Takahata would be directing. And that still did not work well. That is, offers to turn his feet, but he felt that it would be impossible to adapt. But then when he found the offer to turn it into an animated feature, maybe an animated one would. So after Nosaka's approval, both films got accepted from two different publishing houses, with Tokuma on Totoro and Shinchoza on Grave. This resulted the studio to be completely split, where one group had to work with Miyazaki on Totoro and another had to work with Takahata on Grave. And trying to balance both while also working on the promotional campaigns was just pure insanity. Even many of the animators of that time don't even remember what film they worked on Grave. Since the movie takes place in Kobe, Takahata really wanted to find child actors that have the proper Kansai dialect. Takahata, thinking that she could be too young for the part, he only asked what he heard her say for the audition. Watashi no namae wa Shiraishi Ayano desu. Watashi wa kousai de outlines brown instead of the usual black for most. Instead it was done to give it a softer feel, and it was never done in anime before. But he did mention that it was difficult since Brown couldn't because of the tight schedule. As I said before, flop. What's even worse was that even less people saw Grave because some would rather leave happy by just watching Totoro rather than leaving depressed after watching Grave. There are some that even say that this was responsible for the double bill's failure. Interestingly enough, since this was financed by Shinchoza, this was the first Ghibli film where Disney didn't make an English dub, since they had a deal with Tokuma. The English dubs here were done by Central Park Media in 1993 and Seraphim Digital in 2012. On a side note, there are some notable voice work on the Central Park dub, including Veronica Taylor, who was the first voice of Ash Ketchum, Sakuma Confess movie, while another featured a pic. In 2005, NTV made a live-action version of Grave in honor of the 6-year critical acclaim, with critics saying that it's a kingly sad anti-war film. Grave of the Fireflies is one of Studio Ghibli's most profoundly beautiful, yet haunting works. It would also be found in many different top lists, including number 12 in Total Film's 50 Greatest Animated Films, number 6 on Empire's Top 10 Depressing Movies, and in some of Time Out on Terry Gilliam's Greatest Animated Films, number 10 on the 50 Greatest World War II Movies, and number 15 on the Taki's Kiki's Delivery Service, based on a novel of the same name by Eiko Kadono. Every Witch Takes when they're 13, where she has to move out and live on her own in order to find her identity. As she uses her broom to good use, now Kiki has to try to fit in her new environment, accompanied by her black cat Gigi. The production began in 1987, when Group Fudosha wanted the rights to Eiko Kandono's book in the hopes to turn it into a Studio Ghibli film directed by either Hayao Miyazaki or Isao Takahata. However, there was just one big getting the rights. It's more the fact that the two were working on My Neighbor Totoro and Grave of the Fireflies. But even with that, Miyazaki won his first directing job. As for animators and a crew, he brought in the people that worked on Totoro during the time that the movie was close to completion. Well, seems like everything's set up and ready to go. Except for the fact that Ishiki's script sucks. Seriously, Miyazaki really far from what he would envision it. Because of this, Ishiki left the project, and Miyazaki soon learned the classic lesson. He decided to also take on the role as director, while Kai downgraded to assistant director. Ah, well, better luck next time, buddy. For the setting of Koriko, Miyazaki envisioned it as a bit of an alternate universe, where Europe never had any of the world wars during the 50s, and similar to the books, it would be located between the Mediterranean and the Baltic Sea. As for the design, the crew went researching in Sweden and took a lot of inspiration from Visby and Stockholm in order to make the movie city. In fact, some of the street names in Koriko were either partly or fully taken from the actual street names of Stockholm. Now, at this point, I think it's a good time to mention about some of the differences between the book and the film, mostly through how it's told. In the original book, the tone is much more small and has a bit of a pattern, where Kiki meets new people and problems with every delivery, all by ending with her overcoming challenges with her good heart. But in the movie, though, growing up and struggling with independence. Also, her hair is much shorter in the film because it's way more easier to animate, especially if she's gonna go flying around like that. When the author changes, she was pretty mad as, say, Miyazaki with Ishiki's script, and she threatened to even cancel the entire project. So, in order to save the movie, both Miyazaki and Toshio Suzuki went to Kandono's house and brought her to Studio Ghibli to show her what they were doing. After that visit, she decided to let the project continue. If you'd like to know more about what happened during this event, then I recommend to go watch the movie Saving Miss. When it was released on July 29th, 1989, it was a major success, especially with female in her place in the world, but it was also Ghibli's first great hit at the box office, making yen, which it also earns the title of the highest grossing film, pretty rare to find, since nowadays, the only way you can find it is through the Laserdisc box set. In 1998, Disney released Phil Hardman as Gigi, which was his last voice acting role before he died during that same year, and Troy McClure from The Simpsons. Very similar to Castle in the Sky, the Disney dub made some changes to the original film that were approved by edited their version so that it could stick closer to the original Japanese version. Subtitles that were taken directly from Streamline's version, since that one was always more faithful. After the release of Kiki, it was then when Japan started to notice how studios after masterpiece brought to us by two of the masters of their own domain. In American terms, they were Pixar before Pixar. However, having the reputation of pushing the medium to new levels is much more difficult than you can ever imagine. So much so that even Ghibli had a hard time trying to catch. Usually, the animators would get paid by the amount of drawings and cells they've made. But for the production of Kiki, the quality was so high that it took twice as long to make it, resulting in the people they hired aren't permanent. Their job was to work on one team consist of temporary underpaid animators. Both Miyazaki and Toshio Suzuki knew very well that in the Ghibli way, which consists of working on the 1993, and the second step was for Suzuki to resign his job at Animage in order to fully work at Ghibli as a producer. His first film with that credit was Isao Takahata's Only Yesterday, which was Japan's highest grossing film in 1991. With the revenue made for that film, the studio was back on track, and Miyazaki can go right back to work with confidence on his next feature, Porco Rosso. It's the story of, well, Porco Rosso, a freelance heroic bounty hunter who was cursed to be a pig. and other than having a big snout and pig ears, he seems pretty cool with it. In fact, nobody seems to bat an eye about this big curse, but rather just a coincidence. Anyways, as his plane got crashed by an egotistical American called Curtis, he brings it to repairs to an old friend of his named Piccolo and his genius granddaughter Fio. Now Fio is joining Porco to go on some of his high-flying crazy adventures. The movie Jedi, or The Age of the Flying Boat, in Miyazaki's Daydream Data Notes series for the magazine Model Graphics. It was originally going to be just a 30-minute short exclusively for Japan Airlines, but the project eventually grew into something bigger and Miyazaki decided might as well make it a feature film. Before Porco became a pig, he was an Italian Air Force pilot named Marco who worked with Miyazaki. Now I know before I joked about Porco being a pig. Is it a plot element? Not really. During a press release, it was actually revealed that it's to present, believe it or not, fascist. After witnessing the death of his best friend and seeing the rise of fascism, he decided to give up on humanity, quit the Air Force. Your guess is as good as mine. Magic. When Porco tells the story of when he saw those dead pilots over to you, 10 stories of flyers and flying. Specifically, They Shall Not Grow Old. It was revealed that Miyazaki is quite a fan. It also went great with the critics, winning the Prix du Japan Airlines and was brought to the Studio Ghibli Laserdisc box set. But then in 2000, released their English dub with Michael Keaton as Porco, Cary Elwes as Curtis, Kimberly Williams Paisley as Fio, Susan Egan Dyers as Piccolo. Funny enough, Miyazaki actually has a favorite dub version. It's the French dub. Why? 4 words. Genre no. In 2011, Miyazaki said that he wanted to make a sequel to The Last Sortie, and it would have been set during the Spanish Civil War. Also, Porco would have been an old man for the film to reflect how Miyazaki is also aging. He would have been writing the film, and Hiromasa Yonebayashi would have been the director. But now the project seems to be scrapped for reasons. During the time Porco Rosso was finished, studio in Western Kentucky from the way it connects more with nature, surrounded by trees and all different plant life. A year later, the project that the new animators have been working on, Ocean Waves, had finally been released on television, and then later came Isao Takahata's Pom Poko, computer graphics, and was the highest-grossing film of 1994 in Japan. The film depicts tanukis from Japanese folklore trying to
You good?
It's a giant
oh my gosh,
testicle.
I'm so sorry. I was just so focused. In 1995, Miyazaki decided to take a little break from directing in order to focus on a risky decision to drop out of school in order to become a full-time writer. While that is happening, she discovers that there's a mysterious boy who would check out the same books as her in the library, that maybe there is more to him than being annoying. Now Shizuku is out and about learning about love, passion, and most of all, herself. The movie was based on a 1-volume manga called Mimi Onaji-kan 6 years later that's about Shizuku and Seiji, two predecessor. When making the film, Ghibli wanted to open their space for who can be amongst their big-name talents. So they decided to give their animation director, Yoshifumi Kondo, his first director for Ghibli, which he would have been, but he unfortunately passed away in 1988. This his first, but this was also his only film credited as director. This is marked as the first Studio Ghibli. This was also noted as the first Japanese film to use Dolby Digital for the audio, by artist Naoisa Inoue, and he got the job in probably the most unexpected way for him, to try than not. To his surprise, not only did Miyazaki came, but he also bought one of his paintings, Upward Draft. That was when Miyazaki had elements in the fantasy scene that can also be when they were all playing and singing Country Road.
Nice vocal.
Speaking of which, The song Take Me Home Country Road by John times were done by Shizuku's Japanese voice, Yoko Hona, delivery service. There were a lot of concerns with the Japanese Kyubin since their logo is a black cat, and the movie is about a witch making deliveries with, well, a black cat. So to make sure there's no trouble between them, Ghibli decided to have the delivery company as a sponsor for Whisper, which is why you would frequently find some of their trucks in the film. On July 15th, 1995, the movie did great as the highest-grossing Japanese film of the year, making a good revenue with 1.8 billion yen. It even went well with the critics, with Anime News Network saying that it was beautiful and evocative, a fine tale of adolescence yearning different top lists, including number 21 on Film 4's Top 25 Animated Films, and number 54 on Time Out's Top 100 Best Animated Films. Princess Mononoke. It's the story of Ashitaka, whose arm got infected by a demon. The only way he could save himself from inevitable doom is to leave his village and head west to sea with eyes unclouded by hate. But along his journey, he finds himself in a big war between the people of Irontown and the gods of... The idea all began somewhere in the late 70s, where Hayao Miyazaki drew some sketches of a princess with a beast in the woods. A feudal lord father possessed by evil spirits, and now the princess has to him. He began writing and doing some storyboards on August 1994, but these were already done in My Neighbor Totoro, like how the beast the princess married split into the cat bus and Totoro. And third, Miyazaki really wanted to do another movie at the same time, being Boro the Caterpillar. On at the same time, Miyazaki had major writer's block. In order to clear his mind, he accepted to work on doing the music video for Chage and Asuka's On Your Mark. Once that was done, he felt completely refreshed and was ready to fully get into Mononoke. In May of 1995, he started boards and brought his crew to do some research in the ancient forest of Yakushima, and then, 2 months later, that was when production officially began. For the setting of the film, Miyazaki used, there are some elements that were done by computer that was mixed with traditional animation. These include some composition CGI. Speaking of traditional, there is a total of 144,000 animation cells used in the film, most expensive anime to make with a budget of 2.1 billion yen. When thinking about the title, something or whatever, and Princess Mononoke, which the full translation is Princess of Vengeful Spirit. But then there's Miyazaki, who rather liked the legend of Ashitaka. In fact, he even made an entirely new kanji for it. But in the end, the winner was Princess Mononoke. When it was released on July 12, 1997, the movie broke new grounds. It defeated E.T. at becoming the highest-grossing film in Japan of all time, making 14.5 billion yen at the box office. Too bad, though, that it didn't making visuals. Princess Mononoke is a landmark in the world of animation. Since the deal with Disney and Tokuma was made on August 1996, this is their first Studio Ghibli film where they handled the English dub before anyone else. In this case, they left their subsidiary, Miramax Films. It seems that someone didn't get Miyazaki. So, in response to Weinstein's demands, the guys at Ghibli decided to send him a katana with a little note that says, "No." They brought in author Neil Gaiman. When doing the job, he decided to simplify some Japanese terminologies that are not so familiar outside of the country. A good example includes words like jibashiri and shishigami are now just mercenary and forest spirit. This is why some people observe that there is a difference between the English dub and the English titles, since the latter is a literal translation to the original script. For the voices, they originally thought of having Leonardo DiCaprio as Ashitaka, but then the part was given to Billy Crudup. Other notable actors include Billy Bob Thornton as Jigo, Minnie Driver as Lady Eboshi, Jillian the Wolf Goddess, and Keith David as Okoto, the Boar God. Because of some negative results at a test screening and unpleased that they Canada, and Disney was surprised and unamused by what Miramax did. Today's lesson? Never leave your animated projects in the hands of Harvey Weinstein. Outrage from the fans, and protests were made to demand that the Japanese dub was to be included. It's not only with the English and Japanese dub, but also included a trailer and a special short documentary about the English version of the film. For awards, it did get nominated for an Annie for Best Directing, but it was also the first ever animated feature to actually win Best Picture at the Japanese Academy Award. Heck, we'd be really lucky if we ever saw one get nominated. Each adaptation was made out of recycled material, and it ended up receiving great reviews. With such a big impact, Princess Mononoke would find itself on several different top lists, including number 488 in 1999, number 26 on Terry Gilliam, and Top Films 28 on Time Out's Top 100 Best Animated Films. Officially announcing that the movie would be his last, and he would no longer films due to the fact that he's starting to get old. Also, on January 14th, 1998, he decided to quit Studio Ghibli, but not fully. He would still be there to give a helping hand. The reason why he did that was to make room for the new, to give space to the new generation of animators that would carry the legacy simple and calm at the upcoming Ghibli Museum, while the older crew would join them later after they completed Issei film My Neighbor the Yamadas. However, in the summer of '99, like he would any summer, Miyazaki would relax in his producer Seiji Okada's daughter's 10th birthday, which would inspire they could look up to. So Miyazaki wanted to make for those girls. Ultimately, and rightfully so, the third one was chosen, and it would be called Spirited. It's about Chihiro, who's moving to a new home with her parents as they stumble upon an abandoned area. As she explores around the place, she discovers that she is in the spirit world, and her parents were turned into pigs. Don't worry, Chihiro. If Porco Rosso taught me anything, everybody just get used to it. It'll be like nothing happened to them. But now that Chihiro is stuck in the spirit world, she has to work her way in the spirits and herself. When the proposal for the film got accepted, the production began in 2000 with a budget of 1.9 billion yen. As Hayao Miyazaki made this film, he wasn't just doing it for the 10-year-old girl who he was not happy about, called Yuna, and the owners of these bathhouses are referred to as Yubaba. Also, when a woman becomes a prostitute, they would have to change their names to cover their true identity. This is Evie does exactly that, for some gold in a rather unusual way. You'd think that some of the spirits in this movie are based on, but in actuality, some that happened to Miyazaki. The scenes where Chihiro had to clean the river spirit was taken from a time where he had to clean a river and actually had to take out a body. He's very similar to Miyazaki himself, where he wants to get inspired by the Edo Tokyo Open Air Architecture Museum in Kogane, Tokyo. Miyazaki would frequently visit the place that it would start to got made. However, he kept on playing the song over and over again during production that he decided might as well put it into this film. DTS ES 6.1 surround sound. When it was released on July 20th, 2001, the movie did so well to the point, justly drawn fairy tale that will leave viewers a little more curious and fascinated by the world around them. World record for being the first foreign film to earn more than $200 million before even coming to the US. Pixar's John Lasseter was in charge of making sure that this dub would do justice to a monumental film like Spirited Away. not only getting an all-star cast, but also an all-star crew, including Aladdin producer Don Ertz and one of the directors of Beauty and the Beast, Kirk Wise, to be in charge of directing, and Cindy and Don Hewitt to write the dialogue. And yes, since John's in charge and would treat this like he would to a Pixar movie, he even brought in John Ratzenberger to play Aniyaku, and even improvised his dancing song. Coincidentally, this is and Yubaba and her twin sister Zeniba, respectively. They also played Kovu and Zira from the 1998 direct-to-video sequel, The Lion King 2: Simba's Pride. Also, sadly, this film would be marked as Suzanne's final performance in a movie before she passed away in 2008. Nowadays, people across the world would regard this Miyazaki's masterpiece, but also one of the greatest animated features ever made, presented in plenty of top lists, including in the top 10 of see by the age of 14, number 10 on Empire's top 10 best films of world cinema, number rated traditionally animated feature on Metacritic's, and the highest ranking animated feature on IMDb's top 250. Maybe as your valid? Well, just in case, let me just say, yeah, we'll see how that goes in the long run. I say give it a few months and Spirited Picture, making this and Princess Golden Bear at the Berlin International Film Fest Pixar. Because of this, Disney decided to expand the amount of theaters they would show it from 150 to 14. Yeah, I forgot to mention that they really didn't try when it came to the market, knocking Titanic out to officially earn the position of the highest gross, with Spirited Away being one of Japan's. But it turns out that he's no ordinary cat. He's actually the Prince of the Cat Kingdom, and the residents there are so grateful, including the king, that they decide to marry the prince. Obviously, she finds that weird, but the cats are taking her anyway. Now, with the help of some cats out...
Hello? Hey, where are you? I'm at home. Did you get something to eat? I had lunch earlier. Okay, so there's nothing in there. Okay, so what you gonna do? Is there anything in the freezer I could make?
Out of all the Studio Ghibli movies ever made, this is actually the closely a spin-off to their 1995 film, Whisper of the Heart. The character of the Baron actually became so popular that the people at Ghibli character. As for the movie itself, the production began in 1999 as The Cat Project, which was supposed to be a 20-minute short with cats for a theme park in Japan. When Miyazaki got involved, he knew that there should be 3 of the heart: the Baron, Muta, and the Antique Shop. Also, the author of the manga that Whispers was based on, Aoi Hiraki, was commissioned to do the manga version of the short called Baron, Neko no Danshaku, or Baron, the Cat Returns. However, while they were prepping up for the short, the theme... That sucks. Well, I guess I can make a nice standalone short. After the cancellation, the project became a little experimental tool for workers who would like to be the next Ghibli director. But then came a new animator at Ghibli who began working on my help from the manga adaptation of the project, with the character of Haru, that they decided to turn it into a feature-length film with. When it was released on July 19th, 2002, the movie became quite successful. In 2005, Disney released the DVD of the film with an English dub that features an all-star cast that includes Anne Hathaway as Haru, Tim Curry as the Cat King, Kristen Bell as Hiromi, Andy Richer as Natoru, Peter Boyle as Muta in his only anime role, and Carrie Elways as the Baron, who also voiced the same role in the English version of Whisper of the Heart.
There now, your body.
2 years later, Miyazaki decided to take another shot of his magic after Spirited Away with Howl's Moving Castle. Based on Jones, the movie is about Sophie, who is cursed to be cursed. As she escapes the town into the wizard named Howl and being moved by a fire demon named Calcifer. Sophie made a deal with Calcifer that he kingdoms, Sophie must go save Howl and the people in the castle. In order to 2001, Studio Ghibli announced 2 new projects they wanted to make: Girl Who Leapt Through Time, Summer Wars, and Wolf Children. However, because the heads of Ghibli didn't like any of his ideas, Hosoda quit the project. During that time, Miyazaki wanted to retire after making Spirited Away. But because he didn't want to leave such a good idea left on the shelf, he decided might as well. It doesn't completely follow the book with some significant differences off of her so that she can no longer be old, but there are a few elements that were either switched or added for the film. Some of these, Sophie doesn't have any magic, and the Witch of the Waste is now just a side character. In backgrounds, Miyazaki and his crew did some research in Calmar and Requenier in France to examine the architecture and the environment around it. As for the moving castle that's comprised of more than 80 different elements, they took a look at Anna Wynne Jones. After, no, I have no input. In fact, it's likely to be very different. But that's as it should be. It will still be a fantastic film. The movie would then have its world premiere at the Venice Film Festival on September 5th, 2004, and it was released in Japan on November 20th, 2004 with great results. It got a Ebert and Doug Walker would say that this is one of Miyazaki's. On the English dub, the role of directors were assigned to voice director Rick Dempsey and the Pixar director of Up and Inside Out, Pete Docter. It's interesting to note that in the original Japanese version, Sophie was completely played by Chieko Bashio, but in English, the role was split in 2 for the grandma version, which this was Jean's last theatrical film before she passed away in 2010. First of all, as the Witch of the Waste, and crucial notable actors in the English dub include Billy Crystal as Calcifer, Josh Hutcherson as Markel, and Gina Malone as Letty, whom the last 2 would later work with each other on the Hunger Games movies. The film would go on to win several awards, like 3 Tokyo Anime Awards, the Excellence Prize for Animation at the Japan Media Arts Festival, and got an Oscar nomination for Best Animated from it, The Curse of the Were-Rabbit. It also got nominated for 3 Annie Awards, including Best Writing, Best Directing, and Best Animated Feature. The movie would also go on to influence several film mango. After that, it was time for a new director to test out if he has what it takes to be in charge of a Ghibli film. Since we know what Miyazaki can do, let's see if one of his offsprings can make the same magic with Tales from Earthsea. Set during a strange and dark period in the Middle Ages, where the world has become unbalanced, weird phenomenons have occurred, and wizards and witches are losing their power, a young prince named Aaron got a magical... Okay, what a way to make a first impression there, kid. While heading out, he meets a few other people like a wizard named Sparrowhawk, his friend Tenar, and a girl named Teru. But then, an evil wizard named Cobb is seeking for him from his goal is Sparrowhawk, and would do anything to live forever. Several people who wanted to make the film. The only problem? Ursula K. Le Guin, the author of the Earthsea book series. From time to time, she would often get requests to turn her books into a film, but she would refuse every last one of them. Even Hayao Miyazaki tried to request Ursula to make an adaptation in the 80s, but again, she said no to him, thinking that he would just turn it into a Disney film. It wasn't until a couple of decades later when she finally saw some of his works like Spirited Away, and called him back to say that she wanted him to direct the adaptation. That's awesome! Only one problem though, he was too busy working on Howl's Moving Castle. However, because Toshio Suzuki didn't want a golden opportunity like this to go to live up to his dad's reputation, so he decided to become a landscaper and graduated at Shinshu University School of Agriculture. After that, he is not really that good during production because of Goro's lack of experience in the field of animation. But back on a single Earthsea book. It's actually a combination of the first 4 books, novel The Journey of Shuna, which is something Hayao would also do for his movies. When it was released on July 29th, 2006, it did do decently well with 8.4 sentimentality of some of Ghibli's earlier films. Even Le Guin herself feels pretty mixed about it. 2011 with an English dub that features Timothy Dalton as Sparrowhawk, Willem Dafoe as Cobb, Cheech Marin as Hare, and many more. Because of some scenes that Disney's first ever animated feature with a PG-13 rating. It was good enough to... Sure, it was one of the first films ever lost to The Girl Who Leapt Through Twice at Japan's Bunshun Raspberry Inc. It's the jazz on a lighter note. During the preview screening back in 2000, Miyazaki, and he told Goro about the movie that it was an honest way of making it. It was good. A great wizard who gave up on humanity because of the human's treatment to this doesn't want to be a fish and rather wants to be a human with Satsuke. The idea of the movie was inspired. Hayao Miyazaki's inspiration was more abstract than to make his version of the story like what Disney did. He most likely just wanted to play with the bare concepts. The solution to that was to turn her into a goldfish, of course. The movie advertises that The Little Mermaid was the main source of her series, Der Ring des Nibelungen. Some of the human, and in the music for the film to be... Nowhere can you find any traces of CGI used in the film, and the key animations wouldn't begin until about 5 months later. The entire village that the movie takes place in was inspired by Tomonoura, a little town in Seto Nakai National Park where Miyazaki once stayed back in 2005. Speaking of which, he was in charge of animating most of the sea and the waves, and he tried to make sure that they really look the amount of detail put into the film. This holds the record of the most images ever appeared in a Miyazaki movie, with a total of 170,000 of. When it was released on July 19th, 2008, it ended up doing very well with 24.4 billion yen at the box office, and the critics' score at the Japanese Academy Awards. It was also nominated for Best Music and Best Director at the Annie Awards. Not only that, but it was in to translate the script. She did it in a matter of just 4 days, but she would also work with the actors in order to make some revisions. As for directing, there were 3 Pixar guys that stood up to do the task. Of course, there was John Lasseter, but there was also Brad Lewis and The Good Dinosaur director Peter Sohn. For the voice of Ponyo and Satsuke, the daughter of the executive producers Frank Marshall and Kathleen Kennedy recommended getting the siblings of then popular Disney Channel stars. Specifically, Miley Cyrus' sister, Noah, as Ponyo, and the missing Jonas brother, Frankie, as Satsuke. Although they're not as their siblings, they are very lucky enough to avoid the Disney Channel curse. Beforehand, he even refused to go to the Academy Awards when Spirited Away and Howl's Moving Castle got recognized as a way of protesting. But then, as a favor for his good buddy John, he made a special appearance about his film. Originally, Miyazaki wanted to create a sequel. Later on, the studio picked up another book they wanted, a sick boy named Sho. As time would move on, the two would learn more about what they have to go through. But then Haru, the maid of Sho's house, discovers Arrietty's family and wants to prove to everyone that there's time that the novel was adapted. Although this is the first telling of the story in animation, there have been several works based on The Borrowers made for film and television. The 1992 miniseries by BBC and the 1997 movie featuring John Goodman, Jim Broadbent, and Hugh Laurie. In fact, both Hayao Miyazaki's last film. The heads at Ghibli decided to go take a chance and give the directing job to longtime Ghibli animator Hiromasa Yonebi. He was the youngest director to ever work at Studio Ghibli, even more than Goro Miyazaki when he did Earth's. Most likely, as anyone would, he was pretty nervous to find Miyazaki for any sort of help. However, like singer Cécile Corbet, because she was a big Studio Ghibli fan. It was her second album, and so take a listen. It turned out to be really nice, and he called in Cécile to be the movie's score composer and to make Arrietty's song. 2000, the movie ended up doing very well, with critics really liking what Studio Canal for the UK, Will Arnett, and Carol Burnett. They also they added an not only opening highest grossing film in North America made by the studio with $19.2 million, fourth highest grossing Japanese animated feature in America, right under Yu-Gi-Oh! The movie, Pokemon the movie 2000, and Pokemon.
Today I'm going to leave it here, and who do you think this trainer is? This mysterious person. Who do you think this is gonna be? Picking up their mysterious string from Miltank, and we are confirming that it is Milk, so get that out of your dirty minds. Thank you guys so much for watching.